My name is Vsevolod. I'm working in positive technologies as a web application hacker, especially in PTSwarm team. It's our hacker team. And today I want to tell something about cryptography failures in modern web application. In the same name, my presentation, Old But Gold Cryptography Pitfalls. A couple words about me, why I decided to tell about cryptography failures. I work in different positions as a developer, as a web application hacker, as an application security engineer, conducting security audits in all of sorts of programming languages, see a lot of development patterns, both secure and not, and have some experience in finding cryptographic failures. I also write my own scanners and tools that help me to don't waste time on trivial things. And of course, I am inspired of finding critical vulnerability that might not be complex, but very impactful. Alexander, notes. Guys. Sorry, guys. Notes.
We need the notes there.
Yes. Our plan for today is a little bit history. Also, we trying to answer the questions where we can find cryptographic failures in modern web applications, why cryptographic failures arise, and of course, I show a couple of my own real-life cases of exploitation cryptographic vulnerabilities and sum it up. Cryptographic failures arise from the ancient times. Notes, please. 1 second, guys, sorry. Okay. One of the oldest and simplest cipher that people was known from ancient time is the Caesar cipher. It's very easy. It's work like letters shifted by a fixed number of positions in the alphabet, and the key of the cipher is a number of shifted positions. So Caesar cipher is used for protecting. Yes, thank you. Is used for transmit important military messages. Is one intended to protect the messenger from interception. Of course, by modern standards, it is extremely poor cipher, but you can see that from ancient times, humanity has turned to cryptography to protect the transmission of information, ensuring that messages could travel safely even through dangerous channels. We will not consider the entire history of cryptography today, but will immediately move on to a much later. In my opinion, one of the most important cryptographic postulates was formulated by August Kerckhoffs, great 19th century Dutch cryptographer. And this postulate states, cryptographic system should remain secure even if everything except the secret key is publicly known. In other words, no one should hide the implementation of cryptographic primitives and algorithms. Instead, the focus is on applying them correctly. Okay, enough theory. Let's talk where we can find enough history. Let's talk where we can find cryptographic in modern web application today. First of all, of course, it's a cryptographic hash. It's a special algorithm that transforms any input data, for example, a file, a string, a password, into a fixed length strings of bits. Call it a hash. And cryptographic hash has a couple of key properties. First of all, it has to be a one-way function. It's easy to compute a hash from data, but impossible to reconstruct the original data from the hash. Also, it has to be collision resistant. It should be practically impossible to find two different inputs that produce the same hash. And last but not least, avalanche effect. Even a tiny change in the input should produce completely different hash. And for example, you can find cryptographic hash in password storages or integrity checking, etc. of course. Also, we can find cryptography in symmetric cryptography. It is an encryption method where the same secret key is used both to decrypt and encrypt data messages. It's also associated with a high performance because symmetric ciphers are much faster than asymmetric ones, making them suitable for a large amount of data. And for example, you can find symmetric cryptography in TLS after key exchange or encrypting some tokens. Of course, in web application we talk about. Asymmetric cryptography also we can find in opposite use two keys, a public key and a private key. And it enables secure key exchange, authentication, and data integrity without sharing a secret key in advance. We can use a public key to encrypt data and a private key to decrypt it. This provides confidentiality. Also, we can use a private key to sign data and share our public key so others can verify the signature. This provides authenticity and integrity. And we can find it in digital certificates or maybe in GVT tokens, one of the options of signature. Last but not least is a cryptographic random. Cryptographic random differentiate from general random and also has key properties. First of all, it has to be unpredictability. So nobody cannot guess future values even if they know previous outputs. Also high entropy that states that enough randomness to resist brute force or Gaussian attacks. Or of course uniform distribution. That means that all possible values are equally likely. However, cryptography has always been associated with something complex and scientific. Many developers don't really understand or don't want to understand it. Also, modern high-level libraries, artificial intelligence, code borrowing makes life easy and allow not to think about cryptographic details. But the opposite also occurs. Sometimes when somebody, despite following cryptographic standards confirmed by scientists, decides to implement his own genius ideas and produce cryptographic vulnerabilities. So enough theory today. Let's look at some real interesting cases I have recently encountered with. Case 1, IDOR protection based on weak salt hashing. One day, while auditing web application and analyzing traffic in Burp Suite, I saw attractive GET request with several query parameters. One of them was file ID, but what we do if we see an incrementing parameter in web request? Of course, we try an IDOR. But in this case, when I change file ID, it was an authorization error. But I noticed the second parameter, hash. After URL decoding, it became clear that it was a decrypted hashed value. You can see it by URL decoding and C prefix that contains a couple of $sign and it's a decrypted signature. So it can be assumed that developer implemented protection against IDOR in such a way that in order to obtain file, in addition to its ID, you also need to attach its ID hash, or maybe a salted hash. Let's say a couple words about what salted hash is and why it's so popular on developers community. Rainbow table. Rainbow table is a pre-computed table of hash plain text relationships designed to crack hashed password much faster than traditional brute forcing. So we can calculate a hash for the entire dictionary and immediately find the desired value by searching. A salted hash is a hashing method that adds unique random value, salt, to each password before hashing it. This simple idea completely destroys the effectiveness of rainbow tables, so developers like it. But let's take a look at near true implementation of this controller. We see that application indeed validates the salted hash of the file ID. However, no other checks are implemented to verify that the file belongs to the current user. All security rely on the salt value hard-coded in the source code. Even in the real application, it had a very predictable format. It's true, it's not my joke. If an attacker can brute salt or someone can get access to the source code, they will be able to access all the files. The worst thing that it was an endpoint for viewing password and driver access data. To find the salt from the black box side, we can use the well-known utility hashcat. I think a lot of you know what hashcat is, but in this case, we need a targeted dictionary. So as a dictionary, we use a prepared list in which each line begins with the file ID from the request and a postfix as a dictionary value. So in the real-world example under consideration, it was far more than possible. So if you notice an incrementing parameter, always check IDOR. Yes, there are good solutions with similar architecture. For example, Amazon Web Services signed links, but not every developer or vendor is able to implement it correctly and secure. So don't be afraid to brute force hashes. Sometimes it's have weak defenses, and a small targeted dictionary can make all the difference in a pen test. Carefully check source code for hard-coded values, even if there are no RCE, but code reading is possible. Chaining such vulnerabilities together can lead to the leak of the source code and sensitive data. Okay. Oh, sorry. Also, if you want to investigate such cases more in depth, you can scan these QR codes and do it yourself. Okay, go to the case number 2. Deprecated algorithms for signing cookies. If we see a strange encoded value in a cookie, it's good reason to pay attention. In this example, it may be implementing stateless authentication. And if we can generate valid values, we will gain full access. Determining the algorithm used for encryption is much more difficult than determining algorithm for hashing, but not impossible. For example, in this slide, you can see that it is base 64 encoded value, so it's a binary data inside. Also, its length, 24 bytes, and after decoding and deleting padding, it's 16 bytes, and 16 bytes can be 2 DES blocks of 8 bytes. So we can assume that it's DES. It might not be DES, but it's worth a try. Or, of course, if you have access to the source code, you can simply examine it. For example, presented C# code uses an outdated DES encryption provider, And everybody knows that this is an extremely insecure algorithm. It can be cracked by ordinary person today. Therefore, you should never rule out the possibility of outdated algorithms. There are quite a few such cases. I can't say that it's particularly easy, but it's a deterministic task. And there are articles online on how to hack various outdated algorithms. I recommended that you familiarize yourself with approaches to hacking outdated algorithms and have them in your arsenal. You also can scan these QR codes and read online how to crack some outdated algorithms. And we go to the case number 3, improper GVT token validation. But let's have a couple words about GVT. GVT is a JSON web token. It is an open standard for securely transmitting information between parties as compact, self-contained JSON object. And each GVT consists of 3 parts. Header that declares the token type and signing algorithms. A payload that contains data like user ID, roles, expiration. And of course, the main part is a signature. A cryptographic sign that ensures the token hasn't been tampered with. It was another audit. I was auditing the authorization of application, and it was an interesting feature in this application. It had 2 authorization mechanisms. The main one was cookie-based, and the second one was GVT-based. I don't have a valid GVT, but I know that it can be possible. This was the basic checks for GVT token implementation: request with token, request without token, request without signature, header with non-algorithm, etc. But one endpoint began to produce errors. Depending on claims included in the token, there were various validation errors. At first, it was indicated that there was a missing expiration claim. So let's add it and see what's next. After the error with the missing expiration claim was resolved, a new one arose. This time, the issuer claim was missing. And it was clear that its value was validated somehow. Since it was missing, the error showed a null value. This was already promising. Let's look at sample source code that was in this service. We clearly see that for some reason the developer disabled GVT token signature validation, which is a very critical vulnerability. But to preserve the token validity, he decided that checking an externally controlled claim issuer was a good idea. No comments. So all we need to generate fully valid GVT tokens for any role is to know the issuer, which in this case is simply the application installation URL. So by using any tool for working with GVT, like GVT.io, and submitting the URL of the application being attacked into the issuer, we gain full control. The moral of the story is that the developer should not have deviated from the typical implementation of GVT authorization. Sometimes complex systems force developers to take unconventional solutions, but this should definitely not be the case in matters of cryptography. As hackers, we must keep a close eye on such unique solutions. And of course, you also can scan these codes and investigate similar critical vulnerabilities with GVT. And next case, number 4, random that multiply complexity by 0. This time it was a white box audit. The application had cookie-based authorization and the cookie was hashed. Cookie key was hashed. There were a lot of sequential actions of hashing, concatenated, hard-coded strings, and calling other function in this code. To figure out what's going on, you will have to follow the code. So let's look at the make agent ID function. Maybe it's have something interesting for us. Make agent ID function call make agent ID with salt function, where salt argument is an empty string. Interesting. In make agent ID with salt, we see also hardcode, concatenation, and new function calling. Okay, go further. Let's first look at getMachineID function. The purpose of getMachineID function is to get some random from the standard Linux file system path. But this was a containerized application. And if you go into the container, you can see that there are no such paths there. And by default, an empty string is always returned. Okay. But there is also a getHostName function. And the hostname in Docker containers is a random value, by the way. But the application was installed via Docker Compose, and the developer set the hostname in the Docker Compose manifest. With such complexity, the developers have outdone themselves and forgotten where everything comes from. Thus, the getHostName function also always returns a static value and from the Docker Compose manifest. That's all. Also note that the getBinaryVersion function from this code returns the version of installed product, which could be obtained without any authorization on publicly available endpoint. As a result, the entire complex structure has no randomness and generates the same key for any installation of this application. Any user can sign valid cookies for an application of a completely different company, if he can access to it, of course, to code. So it was a self-hosted product where any user had access to the hardcode strings. Despite the complexity and intricacy of the key generation algorithms, incorrect random number generation allowed for completely compromise the whole system. So complex never doesn't mean safe. Go to the end, there is a word waiting there. And I want to conclude with some words about cryptography again. So cryptography has played an important role in protecting information since ancient times and cannot be taken lightly. Stereotypes about the complexity of applied cryptography and modern tools allow to accept cryptography without going into details, and many follow this. Hackers should pay special attention to the parts of applications that use cryptography, especially if it looks strange. Always try to understand the details. This is often the key to the success. And remember that hard work pays off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vsevolod. We have time for questions, like actually 20 minutes. So feel free to ask any you have. Let's give it a time. Okay, if there is no questions, please free to one question with them.
Yes.
Hi there. Thank you for the presentation, for the talk, and for the thought, the message at the end. It was important. The hard work pays off. Truly, it is. I'd like to ask you if you, for the insights you gave about JWT, if necessarily any application which uses in enterprises, when we are developing with JWT, do we need to understand the basics behind it, or can we just apply on the endpoints that we are developing just in order to use technology that's already done in order to feel safe, or is it necessary to always be involved and break through the barrier of development and system management?
Okay, thank you. Of course, ordinary developer doesn't have to understand the whole science behind the GVT or cryptography that its signature relies on. But I think that all developers should pay attention on standards and recommendation for using GVT tokens. So when someone, like in one of my examples, decided to skip signature checking, it destroys the whole system. But if this person maybe follow security standards and don't try to reinvent the wheel with his own implementation, this critical vulnerability doesn't creep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? Okay, I think we can move to the next talk. Thank you so much.